Welcome to the Thinc Conversation series, which explores issues shaping South Africa. I'm Mathebula from the Thinc Foundation. We are conversing with South Africans who have influenced and continue to influence. Some have led or are leading. They have ideas on how to improve our country through leadership. This is more than a conversation. It is a thought-provoking dialogue for a nation ready for the next 30 to 50-year takeoff. Today, we're exploring the subject of media leadership and ownership. There are myths to be demystified. With me is Mr. Makhudu Sefara, editor of the Sunday Times and chairperson of SANEF. Dr. Makhudu, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. South Africa has a media history of about 150 years. If we take the Herald,
Sure.
which is turning 150 years today, as our benchmark. It has been a rough and tumble period. We can all agree that it was. But as a society, we lived with the press as a source of news and information, whether we like that information or not, but we lived with it. Can you still believe we are saved as a democracy with the form, character, and content of the press we have?
The short answer is that yes, we should. But does that mean there are no challenges facing the media with respect to the content and form and the nature of the contribution that the media makes towards our democracy? The answer is no. So the challenges are many. But if you look back to this history that you're talking about, you will find that in that 150 years and more, the media has been communicating a lot of things. The nature of what was communicated in that 150 years, has been and will continue to be a subject of critical reflection by scholars and historians. And that is necessary, I believe, to inform how we approach things going forward, how we deal with today's challenges. In that past, there would be, for example, issues of wars in the world, and there will be the end of colonialism in our country. What did that mean for people interested in information and how it's synthesized and disseminated? There would have been the beginning of apartheid. How did the media deal with that? And apartheid's own 48-year history and how it ended. The beginning of the processes leading to the 1996 Constitution after the elections in 1994. How did the media characterize the nature of discussions happening in the country? There'll be pushbacks and all manner of things, and I think there's many varied conversations that should be had about who is telling the story, from what vantage point, and who ought to be contributing to the telling of that story, who's not in the newsroom to tell that story, and who, I must add, is outside the newsroom but actively participating in the battle of ideas, trying to force a change in narrative or an inclusion of particular aspects, and making sure that what comes out as what we call public discourse is inclusive of their own ideas and what they believe ought to be on the table, and who are not doing that. So in other words, they sit there and say, oh, but look at the media, it's covering X and Y, but it's excluding these other people. And meanwhile, that coverage of X and Y is informed in part by the push from a particular angle. And is there a concomitant push by people who feel that their narratives are excluded? So, I mean, I can move you to the left and right and so on and so on. But as far as I'm concerned, that's a high level framework of that history, and that history must continue to be told. We must go back to Kentemba, Natnakasa, and their experiences in the newsrooms. Where newsrooms were divided and according to race, and journalists sat on white journalists on one part.
That part,
Yes.
Makhudu. We have had this 150-year history,
Yes.
which was rough and tumble.
Yes.
It had binaries. There were serious binaries there. There was black journalism. Percy Qoboza, some of your mentors, maybe, and icons and role models. But there was also white journalism out there. Have we, as the media, or has the media graduated into the non-racial character that the Constitution is expecting from people? I mean, that is a mechanical question, to say, have we followed that non-racial character? And if we did not, are the things that are holding us,
Yeah. So the story of the South African media has a lot of similarities with the story of democracy in South Africa. So the same question you are asking me can be put around to ask, as South Africans in general, have we mutated to a point where we have embraced unity in our country in terms of how we move forward and deal with challenges that we face today? And the answer will be no. It's not a specific point in time or in the continuum that you get to where people say we have transitioned and so therefore we are fine. It's a continual struggle. So we sit there within the various newsroom leaderships, and we say, for example, in the Sunday Times, this is who we are, and we are writing for a diverse audience. We are inclusive in our approach, and the same thing is said within SANEF as an organization of editors in the country. These are the things that we do, and this is how inclusive we ought to be. And we look at the Constitution and its values, and then we infuse them on how SANEF ought to operate. And if you look at how the Sunday Times is operating, those are infused there. But the minutiae of the outcome of incidents and certain things, like a reporting of a particular story, might take you back to a broader framework question about whether is this media transforming? Why are we seeing reports like this? And that points to a particular story. Now, in my view, you need a focused investigation or look or deep dive into what happened with the particular story in order for you to explain that story. But the framework in general is structured such that we must become inclusive. But at a general level, if you said, look, let's forget the details. At a general level, are we inclusive or not? The plus minus approach to the answer is going to be, we largely are, but there remains, big areas of concern in terms of how we cover people of diverse backgrounds, in terms of who sits in the newsrooms and who in these newsrooms, who are the people who have power to make particular decisions about which story is being pursued, how it's being approached, the detail of implementation, something like that.
We are now in a state where South Africa is in a mid-course review of its democracy. It's they can call it what they like, but it's basically a mid-course review of the democracy after 30 years, to get to talk to Tinzwalo, and say, Tinzwalo, what do you think we should do for the next 30 years, And they've chosen a national dialogue.
Yes.
To do that. And it's coming up on the 15th.
Yes.
Does the fourth estate have agenda points for consideration by the dialogue? If so, what are those? Because there's a national dialogue coming, and you, one of the leaders in the fourth estate, chairperson of SANEF, and an editor of the Sunday Times. Well, what would you take there if one would ask in that dialogue?
So there's quite a number of things. So as maybe to start outwards, moving in, as an industry, we have discussed the national dialogue and what needs to happen, and at the general level our view is that there's nothing fundamentally wrong with people coming together to review and look at what has worked and what has not worked, and come up with decisions about what to do going forward. So at a general level we think that this is okay, but do we think that a dialogue such as is being put on the table is a panacea for the kind of challenges that we have had since 1994? We think not, and also we doubt whether the people who said let's come up with a dialogue, they themselves thought that this is the be all and end all of our challenges. So that's one, and also, as the media, we are interested. I mean, there are many issues about the dialogue. So, who must lead the dialogue? Is it a government dialogue or a government-sponsored dialogue? Is it a foundation's dialogue?
I like that thought. We just have to take an ad break, and then I want you to continue. We'll be back with more on the Thinc Conversations.